Hey guys, Doman here, and this is another episode in Star Citizen Megaships. Due to an inconclusive amount of votes, as of me counting them, last video in the comment sections below, I decided to go ahead and go unknown on this episode. So now, for this special unknown episode, we will be diving into the ship known as the Pegasus. And we'll be talking more about that and a lot about the UEE and the UEE's history. So, let's do this. Right, so the Pegasus class escort carrier is a escort carrier to the UEE Navy. It's just one below the Bengal carrier. The Bengal carrier is a much larger vehicle and can hold much more. So this is supposed to be a small carrier. Now it's a lot bigger than an Idris or a Javelin or anything like that. This thing is still massive, okay guys? It's capable of carrying 30 craft strike force deep behind enemy lines if necessary. The Pegasus, which was also formerly known as the Panther, is currently being grey boxed out right now. Well, obviously that was a while ago. That was back in 2014. So the thing is probably looking pretty finished right about now, but we have yet to see any updates on it. So the Pegasus is going to be a lot faster and a lot more maneuverable than the Bengal, and it's going to be capable of housing quite a few fighters. You know, it'll be capable of housing a 30 craft strike force on board. So that's pretty awesome, you know what I mean? It's a very, very large ship, and it's rumored that there might be a couple of these floating out there in the verse to be salvaged and used. If you have an organization, you might be able to go out there and rescue one of these ships and add it to your fleet. It's going to need a hell of a lot of crew to man it. There is no official numbers yet for the Pegasus, but I'm looking forward to seeing the Pegasus in a more complete look of it. Like, when it's finished and stuff, it's gonna be quite cool. I love how it looks like a bit like a stretched out Idris, with the nose having a similar form of shape, that very boat-like nose. Like, it's very cool. It's also a asymmetrical ship, and it mounts one engine that's the same kind of engine you'd mount on a Bengal. It has one of those on one side of it, where it also has the bridge. It's similar to the Caterpillar in a few regards to its asymmetricalness. The bridge is on one side and stuff like that. It's covered in guns, guys. Absolutely covered. It has cannons and missiles and all sorts of things. You name it. I mean, it's got it. You know what I mean? There's no official numbers on the weapons or the weapon classes it carries as of right now, but I can imagine they're pretty beefy and pretty powerful. So be sure to look out for that. So yeah. Can't wait to see the Pegasus escort carrier in action, and no doubt Death Corp will be looking for one in the verse when the game goes live. We'll be out there trying to salvage one of these beasts. So yeah, it'll be pretty awesome indeed. So in order to get an idea for the Pegasus and what kind of a ship it is, we have to dive into the history of the UEE in itself. So we'll go to when it was the United Nations of Earth, 2380 to 2523. Once humanity began to expand into the stars, the governments of Earth slowly began to realize that, politically, the individual governments of the various countries wouldn't be able to maintain themselves in the bright future ahead. It wasn't until the year 2380 the governments of Earth decided to put aside their social and political differences and unify as a single government entity named the United Nations of Earth, the UNE. Over the next century, more and more people began to move off-world and start over a freshly terraformed worlds. By the 26th century, almost 70% of the human population lived on other planets and other systems. Those living off-world felt like they were not being equally represented by the government and began to petition the UNE for a reform. Finally, in 2523, the UNE responded by transforming itself into the United Planets of Earth, which is in the next stage in the UEE's evolution. So, when it was the United Planets of Earth, well, that was in 2523, and that lasted until 2546. This new political structure introduced the Tribunal of the High Secretary, responsible for maintaining the infrastructure, the High General, responsible for the expansion and protection, and the High Advocate, responsible for law enforcement. And at the top of the pyramid, the Senate, composed of delegates represented by all of the human planets around the galaxy. Then we had the First Terran War in 2543, and that lasted until 2546. So only around 3 years, folks. So 2541, the UPE got its first real challenge when prospectors discovered the Terravan, a warrior race who ultimately sparked the first of 2 wars with the humans. During that time, well, that is debated now, by the way, folks. It's rumored that we started the war. During that time, though, the war elevated the courageous actions of ambitious young officer named Iva Messer. Now, this guy is going to be real bad news, and you'll start to hear more about that. So, used as a poster child for recruitment, Messer, used his newfound fame and put it into his political career. His passion and ruthlessness quickly paved the way to the high general position. Citing that the system was mirrored in endless debate, when sometimes a direct course of action was preferable, he began to lobby for the creation of a prime citizen position, a single voice, to basically hear arguments but ultimately make the call. Of course, he was shocked and honored to be asked to ascend to the rank himself. Upon the election as the first and last prime citizen, it isn't long before Iva Messa restructured the government into the new United Empire of Earth, the UEE, and anoints himself Imperator, ushering in an age of unprecedented expansion and colonization. Now, it may all sound like, a nice boat ride down the river, but it's not. This is where things get pretty dark in humanity's history, or in Star Citizen's humanity's history. United Empire of Earth, Mesa era, 2546 to 2792. The Second Terravan War, 2603 to 2610. At the dawn of the 27th century, the remaining Terravan driven to the outskirts of the galaxy were organized under a new Terravan warlord named Kroth Thal, who launched an attack against their old enemies. The Terravan's sole mission was to reclaim Elysium 4, their former homeworld. Now, I mean, you can't blame the guys. The settlement on Elysium 4 rushed up to take arms in defense of their homes. Freyng attempted to rejoin the same malady that afflicted him as a child resurfaced, preventing him from doing his duty. On June the 24th, 2610, Set Karathral suffered a catastrophic defeat at the hands of Squadron 42 and the infamous Battle of Centauri. With his fleet rapidly falling to either destruction or surrender, Karathral mustered up his remaining loyal pilots to make a desperate charge for Elysium 4. Though they suffered an additional 70% casualty, his fleet finally reached the atmosphere of their homeworld. The Second Terravan War cemented Messa's power. Basically, what happened was the warlord and his loyal pilots who made it turned off their heat shields and burned up in the atmosphere of their own planet, because if they couldn't live on their own planet, then sure as hell they were going to die there, which is kind of admirable if you think about it. So the Terravan were a proper warrior race, and there was nothing quite like them. So those guys are pretty cool. Now this is where things start to get dark. For nearly 2 centuries, the UEE expanded into the universe, snatching up worlds and terraforming them at an unsettling rate. All the while, the Mess's power and title transferred down through his children, each seemingly more cruel and greedy than the last. It was a time of military oppression and fascism. The Imperator even used the threat of war with the Zayan and the Vandul to subjugate the populace. Terra repeatedly tried to speak out against the Imperator, but most, disappeared shortly afterwards. So if you ever spoke out against him, you kind of get killed. It wasn't until the infamous massacre of Garan II that the resistance really sparked a public outcry. A small planet brimming with life, Garan II was sold to a terraforming outfit by Imperator Messer 19. The atmospheric processing wiped out every living thing on the planet. When vivid footage of an outcry hit the spectrum, the public finally had enough. Riots broke out, underground resistance movements attempted to fan the flames of revolution, finding unlikely allies in the Zayan Empire who helped smuggle insurrectionists around the UEE space. United Empire of Earth, Democratic 2792 to the present. On May the 3rd, 2792, Imperator Linton Messer XI was overthrown, and Erentoy claimed the rank and restored the tribunal system. The new UEE tried desperately to make amends for centuries of abuse with the Fair Chance Act, which prohibited terraforming on planets with established chain of life. Was quickly enacted to prevent events like Garan 2 from happening again. The UEE built the Ark as a repository, as an attempt at reparations with the various alien civilizations they had antagonized. For galactic knowledge, they finally began construction of the synth world, Project Archangel, as a final alternative to having to terraform ever again. To the present, the government has maintained the same politics. Synthworld has largely been unstable failure despite repeated efforts to get the project back on track. The money has started to dry up, the military is spread too thin, and the cracks are starting to show. So as of right now, the UEE is starting to crumble. And it's an interesting time in Star Citizen. So when we jump in and when we get into the game and start playing and whatnot in the full universe, when we'll have all these Pegasus carriers and Bengal carriers and things like this, they will be in a state of disrepair, and they will not be these glorious ships that they were formerly known as, you know, like these huge staples or these pillars of the UEE and the Navy. There will be these run-down capital ships hanging on by a thread going around, pretty much, because the defense budget for the UEE is starting to drop and they're running out of cash quick, and the government's starting to sweat a little bit and things like that. Only time will tell what will happen to the UEE. I know this was a little bit more history orientated around the UEE, but there is very limited information on the Pegasus, and in order to get an idea of where it came from and you know, whereabouts it fits in, you have to understand the military history of the UEE. Now, the Pegasus is it's more of a striking carrier. Like the Bengal carrier is great for patrol and defense and things like that, but the Pegasus is more of an offensive vehicle. It's built to carry many bombers. It has two launch tunnels for bombers, and then it has a large hangar section for things like retaliator-sized bombers. So it's a very offensive carrier. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this, and I hope it was more than enough information for you guys on the UEE. If you ever want me to do videos on the history of the Banu or the Cyan or any of that sort of stuff, let me know, and I'll do a video on each of the races for Star Citizen. But you guys have to request it. I won't do it otherwise. You know, I'll only do what kind of videos you guys are wanting to see on this channel. Remember, I do it all for free. There's no profit here at the moment, and yeah, remember to vote for the next ship. Unknown is now been completed, so that is no longer an option, and I will continue this series up till 10. So when we get to episode 10, then I'll move on to another video series. So don't forget to vote for your favorite ships, guys, and get them up there before we stop doing Star Citizen mega ships. I might do another season of it sometime. I'm not entirely sure as of right now, but yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching, and it's been fun as always making these videos for you. And yeah, you know the drill, Commanders. Fly safe, and I'll see you in the verse.